I have the pleasure of being joined today by Meredith Wilson, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Emergent Risk International. Meredith, great to see you. Thank you so much for making time to catch up with me.
Hey, Des, great to see you too, and no problem. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So I wanted to catch up with you today to have a quick conversation around the ASIS Global Security Exchange event for 2023, or GSX as it's more commonly referred to. I know you're keynoting at the GSX event today, and we'll get into that in a moment, which is being held at Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center in Dallas, in Texas on September the 11th through the 13th. But before we dive into a couple of questions I've got for you, I wonder if you could maybe just give us a brief outline of your role and remit. Even though CEO sounds obvious, I know that you've got a very unique business and probably a very unique lens through which you see the world, and maybe just give us a little bit of background on what Emergent Risk International is and does.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Emergent Risk International. We are a global risk intelligence firm. We've been around since 2014. Started the company out of Dallas, and really focused on very specifically on risk intelligence in the business context. I had previously worked for ConocoPhillips and another oil company, and in the US government as an intelligence professional, and felt like there was kind of a gap where we could be doing better strategic intel analysis, really focused on business outcomes, and where we could be doing better training for intelligence analysts in business. So over the years, we went from being sort of bespoke intelligence and analysis to intelligence and analysis training. We have a SaaS platform that is both a data platform as well as a content platform for our intel analysts. And we also do embedded analyst services now and consulting. So it grew rather fast. And today we're about 70 people, and we're all over the world. And it's been a ton of fun. But I'm excited to go back to Dallas, where I was based until the pandemic, and now actually get to do another ASIS in Dallas.
Yeah, in fact, you are keynoting this year and running a session for the 2023 GSX event in the pre-conference gathering, I believe. And I loved the title of it. And for our audience, it's titled Adapt or Die, AI in Security Intelligence Work, which really just grabbed me immediately and had me thinking about the likes of Arnie Schwarzenegger in Terminator, or the iRobot movie. But there were three key objectives that were listed, which I hope you don't mind me just outlining for our audience. The first really grabbed me. It was understanding the state of AI, and in particular, how it is being deployed in security and intelligence. The second point was build a growth mindset around how AI can positively factor into your organization's evolution, which I think is going to happen whether you do it or not. And it's probably timely to take those reins and direct it rather than letting it happen to you. And thirdly, learn about AI's current deficiencies when being used for intelligence purposes. Without giving away too much, although that may have, I wonder if you could just run us through some of the key highlights that you are actually presenting on, and some of the things that people can look forward to, and why they should register and attend the event and come and see your talk and presentation in particular.
Yeah, so as I was telling you before we started, I'm not a tech person per se. I'm an intelligence person, and being an intelligence person means being relentlessly curious and always needing to kind of stay ahead of trends. And with AI, we've been watching it for years, but the sort of explosion of ChatGPT onto the scene this year was really interesting, because it actually goes back a few years now that has been around, and we've been watching it since 2019 to see where it would go. But when the generative AI thing really just broke out, for me, this is a pivotal moment in history, and we need to make sure that we are both aware that it's a pivotal moment in history, but also figure out what we don't know. How do we position ourselves both as professionals, as well as companies, as well as a society, to best take advantage of it and to best not be victimized by it at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, it's that was kind of the thinking going into it. 8 months later, I guess we're about 8 months later now since I proposed that topic. So many things have changed. that as I look at it, I still haven't finished the presentation because it keeps changing. But but I really do think that as security professionals, we have both a need for our own professional careers to really have a handle on it, but also a responsibility, because from a security perspective, there are as many things that can go wrong as there are things that can go right. And so for me, it's an opportunity to talk about the opportunities that it presents, but also some of the downsides that we need to be extremely aware of.
Yeah, in many ways, in security in general, across all topics, whether it's physical, logical, or virtual and cybersecurity, we do, as I'm sure you agree, have to deal with just this constant state of shifting sand and adapting to new attack vectors and so forth. And an interesting point that you brought to mind here is that when a lot of people were sort of shocked and awed by the ChatGPT experience, what they probably didn't realize is that they were talking to essentially a chat GPT in a dumber format every day. They use search engines, and in particular like Google, because that is essentially just machine learning, looking at a lot of data and trying to figure it out. And yet we're now running around trying to figure out what to do about ChatGPT, but it's in our phones with Siri, it's in our phones with Google, etc. We just didn't know it was quite so emergent, and now that it's talking back in real time, I imagine that's become quite a cold shower for a lot of people that are coming to you now looking for help to figure out what to do about that.
Yeah, I think it's it's really interesting. And just in the last few weeks, we've gone from investors throwing money at companies to invest in AI and do that, which they will continue to do. But it's starting to have a reputation impact on the other side for the companies that are developing AI. And part of that is down to people starting to realize that they've been training these models for years and we're not aware of it. When we would talk about AI in the past, people would think of it as this esoteric thing that nobody really understood. And there's definitely some truth to that. There are some pieces of this that even the people who develop it don't fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
But what a lot of people did not know, some of which is in the terms and conditions for the social media sites they use, for for using Google, anything like that, is that some of this is and was training AI, and that's how these models came to exist. And so I think that in itself is a cautionary tale, and maybe it's more than a cautionary tale, but for us going forward, that technology has gotten way ahead of the average person and their understanding of it, and that social media was the same thing. It's gotten way ahead of what people actually understand about how their data is used, how it's monetized, all of those things. And so where we sit with AI, we're on the precipice of people actually training themselves out of a job. And that's something we need to be aware of, as well as we need to take advantage of learning how to use it so that we don't train ourselves out of a job, right? Yeah. There are and there's so many unknowns right now, right? But I think from a security perspective, there's just a huge amount of responsibility that we have as intelligence and security professionals to make sure that it is used in an ethical manner, and that it is not used, to take advantage of people, or, some of the other things that can just happen by accident, like the sort of bias that is just inherent in the models because, it was trained by people. So, yeah.
Yeah, there are some very big risks, aren't there? If you've got a particular culture or region or nation or corporate culture, and that's built into the platform, that it can't help but have bias, even if they make their best effort. But there's a couple of interesting things you said there. I remember we were talking about this to some associates in a boardroom recently, and they were worried about the very same things. And I assured them that when the telegraph came out, no one had a telegraph machine in their house. They went to a telegraph office and had the message sent for them. Now we've all got SMS and email. When typing pools had to teach people around the place to type and no longer had a job as a typing pool, everyone got a word processor. Those jobs pivoted. So I'm pretty confident we'll get to this. But, particularly in security, I think this is moving so fast that there's an attack surface that people didn't even know existed, let alone impact them, that is actually baked into the DNA of these very tools. And I guess this is something that I was really keen to chat with you about with regard to some of the key reasons that you think that security experts should register and attend, and more than anything, your talk in particular. But what are some of the things that you think that some of your peers in the security space, whether they're the physical security protecting bricks and mortar, or all the way through the other end with cybersecurity and the logical element of it, what are some of the things that jump to mind for you that you think that experts should register and attend for?
Well, as I was telling you before the call, just simply walking around the floor there, they're going to see AI on display, in some places more than others, but there will be a lot of particularly technology providers that will be talking specifically about the AI that they have built into their programs and things like that. And I think in some cases, for me, I want to see what the facial recognition guys are doing. I want to see what some of these other technology providers are doing, and also what they're doing to safeguard against misuse. And I think that is, that's just as important, because especially most of the people that will be at GSX are there representing big brand name companies, companies that absolutely need to maintain their reputation. And when these things are misused, that's one of those key things that can happen, where people don't realize what they're getting into. And I don't want to talk, and I don't want to make this a negative thing. You can cut this out if you need to, but what I mean is, people should see what's out there.
Indeed.
But they should also, have a really in-depth conversation with those providers, so that they really understand what thought has gone into those dual use technologies, and what safeguards they have, and that kind of thing.
No, indeed. In fact, we will definitely leave that point in, because it's an extremely salient point. And we're seeing this now every day. And you mentioned facial recognition. There's a lot of paranoia around it. And there's a nation in particular we won't name because it gets picked on, where facial recognition is built into the systems around society. And yet, last week there was a story about a shopping center and a food mall in London where you have to scan your face to get in. And the question's being asked, well, how does this work? And one nation saying, well, there's a particular nation saying we've been doing this for a couple of decades and it works fine. And then other people say, well, actually, you've been using the data for other nefarious reasons. But then, of course, we've got security systems where they're used to get us into doors on one side, but that data is being sold elsewhere, in the same way that we do with social media and search engines, right? We get served ads for a particular thing from a search engine based on our search results. So facial recognition is not going to be any different. Excuse me. It's really just what the companies do. I wonder, with all of that in mind, what are you personally looking forward to with regard to an event like this? Because I think, or even before we get to that, when you think about GSX, it's quite a unique fit. You were reminding me of a couple of things there. When I go to events like RSA in the USA or InfoSec in London and Europe, they're very vertical niches in cybersecurity or brand solutions or vendor solutions. But GSX seems to be quite unique. Is it fair to say, and I'd love to get your take on this, that GSX is one of those very unique events where security professionals should register and attend, because there aren't many other events like this where physical, logical, and virtual get together with the brands and the demos and because you've got keynotes, panels, demos, certifications and training, or vice versa, and networking, all those things in this one event. Is it fair to say, do you think that there's one of the very unique value props that this event has over others?
I think it's a very big tent event, right? I've known about ASIS and been involved in different things with ASIS since 2007, when I started working in the private sector, and the organization has just grown enormously. And so these events have become just as the security, sort of private sector security itself, has become more business oriented, has become more intellectual, has become, you still have the guns, guards, and gates side of it, but there's a whole bunch more now, right? And, they've broadened to include, specifically groups for women, specifically, different affinity groups to, different parts of the world, all of that. So it's become such a big tent event that you do encounter people that do just about everything. I was telling you, when we registered the first time to do this, we were a teeny tiny company, first of all. And if we hadn't had an office 2 blocks away, I might not have done it, but it was such a great experience, because there was no category for intelligence companies at the time. And,
Right.
and now, of course, there is. And it's absolutely, part and parcel of having a good security program is having that intelligence program. And so now for us, it's it was a great event then, but it's a really great event now because we get to interact with all different aspects of corporate security groups and some other types of groups too. Sometimes you get your business continuity groups there. Sometimes you get your crisis management groups there. So it really, it's a very broad basket. But, for me, just seeing clients that we haven't seen all year, it's a great time just to catch up with people. I kind of leave the sales to the salespeople, and so for me, it's been really great just to to go and catch up with all of my colleagues and clients and such from the sector.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that you mentioned there, and I'm keen to get just a quick take on it, if you don't mind, is that when I think about what Emergent Risk International does, and as you mentioned, there wasn't necessarily a category in this particular event some not so long ago, but now it's a big part of it. Do you think that it is a case that intelligence element in the space that you're in is going through this boom economy sort of experience now, where people probably had a gut feeling it was required, but weren't quite there, and now it's really a case of a requirement rather than a desired? It's a required element. Is that fair to say? And I'm sure you were playing a pivotal role in bringing this to events like the Global Security Exchange with ASIS.
It's it's interesting. It's changed a lot since I came into this. When I came into it in 2007, there were like 12 of us in the country. It was a couple of oil companies, a few finance companies, and we actually created this small group called PSIC, which was the Private Sector Intelligence Council. And it was never really more than a big club of intelligence professionals. But at the time, we had all come out of government. There was hardly anybody else doing this, and we needed people to talk to, because I'm not sure if you know this, but intelligence people, we love to talk, especially the analysts. And but we just needed people to like really bounce this off of and figure out, how do we even build an intelligence program in a private sector organization? And so the evolution of it since that time has just been astronomical, and it goes in spurts. So during 2014, we saw a huge, well, actually, I should go back. 2011, we saw a big growth in 2011 during the Arab Spring. Suddenly companies were like, hey, we need somebody to keep an eye on this stuff. I don't know if you remember, but, everything was kind of on fire in the Middle East. And there was a lot of evacuations going on. There was a lot of, we had to evacuate a whole bunch of people out of Libya, and it was chaos. It was a great learning experience, but it was really, a difficult time for people that had to, find a way to get people out, protect their local employees, all of that. And so there was a big growth there. And then 2014, with the kind of advent of ISIS and everything going on with that, then the Malaysian Airlines crash, all of those things again, where, you had another group of people say, wow, we really do need an intelligence function here. And, but COVID was where it went just like this, and suddenly we couldn't find enough intelligence analysts to hire. And it's cooled off a little bit now, but what I think was really different about COVID is that security groups were the only people within companies that had people that kind of did this stuff anyway. And so a lot of security groups found themselves basically handing over their intel group to support crisis management, to support health and safety, and to support all of the security things that fell out of COVID, right? And so suddenly, we had all of these companies that needed an intel program, and they needed it now. They didn't have time to like train people up and do all of that. They just needed somebody to sit down in the seat and be ready to do it. And so that's where I've seen by far the most growth was during the COVID years. And, now we're sort of on the other side of it, but now we have climate change and AI and, all of the other things that are worrying companies. So yeah, I don't think it's going away.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, Meredith, you've definitely given us some glowing insights into the reasons that folk should not only register and attend, but also catch up with yourself and have a conversation with your team at Emergent Risk International. One quick last question, if I can, because I know I've taken a lot of your time. A lot of conversations I've had in the last couple of months leading up to this event with C-suite, who may not normally think that security is part of their remit. Whether it's a CFO and chief financial officer, or whether it's a chief risk officer, A lot of people think about chief information security officers in this space, so they might think about the chief security officer and the physical, as you said, the three Gs. But I'm advising a lot of people to come to events like this because chief risk officers now need to know where some of these things are going to impact their organization, because they're generally inward focused. Now they need to be outward. CFOs need to be aware of it. And in many ways, a lot of C-suite, in my view, need a language and a vocab with which to talk about some of these security issues, because they are impacting them every day. They're impacting them personally, impacting their roles, their organizations, their business units, their staff, their towns, their cities, their states, their countries, the world in general. Do you think it's a fair thing to say that a lot of the non-usual C-suite should really be registering, attending, to just get across what's potentially going to impact them if it's not already?
Yeah, I think, and I think it probably depends on the type of company, the size of company. When I think about it, I think my thing has always been, and again, this is natural curiosity with being an intelligence person and being an analyst, but is that, especially if you're in a company, you should never be only focused on your silo. And if you're running a company, you have to be able to look across the organization. You have to know how the pieces fit together. Now, when you start a company and you build it from the ground up, you know how the pieces fit together because you put them there. But when when you're coming into a company as an executive, maybe you come out of business school and, kind of worked your way up in the company and all of that, but there are probably still large parts of the companies that you don't understand how they work, or you haven't spent a lot of time really looking at. And I think for a lot of companies, COVID was that moment where, the C-suite kind of sat back and went, whoa, wait, who have we got to deal with this, right?
What just happened?
And it was definitely an all hands on deck thing, right? It was not just a security issue. There was no way to extricate the health and safety issues from the security issues, from the business continuity issues, right? I mean, it was all hands on deck. But I think, from what my clients tell me is, that their C-suite got a much better understanding of the importance of their role and of the ways that security can actually build opportunity, as well as costing money. Because really, when you have the front end insights, when you're able to to look ahead and make those decisions ahead of time, there's so many more things that are possible, and everything from cost savings to avoiding catastrophe. But the long and short of it is, if you're thinking about going to to build an understanding, my gosh, I absolutely would say, come and spend some time on the floor, come and talk to people, go listen to George W. Bush. It's
Yeah, indeed.
It's going to be an interesting one. So, but yeah, I absolutely think there are reasons to be there, even if you're not in the security vertical. Also,
there you go.
Fun.
That line right there should be front and center on the top of the brochure. Well, Meredith, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and on and off camera. And I really, really know that we will definitely have you back on the show, both in video and audio podcast format. We've got so much great stuff to talk about. But thanks so much for sharing all those great insights, introducing yourself to our audience and your organization and the event. And have a fantastic event. I know you're going to be a sellout presentation and keynote. I'm just sorry that I can't personally be there. I've got a clash, unfortunately, on the other side of the planet myself, but I will definitely be there next year. And for our audience, folks, wherever you see this video, we will have details about the event. We will have links to where you can visit the website and learn all about both ASIS International and also their 2023 Global Security Exchange, aka GSX event. We would love you to click, have a look at it, and obviously we'd love you to register and attend, meet amazing people like Meredith, attend the keynote, learn from it, and just join the conversation and be part of it. Because my view now, and I'm sure Meredith you agree, is that if you don't join this conversation, if you don't lead it, it's going to happen to you as opposed to manage it. Meredith, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great event. Safe travels, and I will look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dez. Have a great night, or I guess it's daytime for you.
It is indeed. Likewise. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.